My name's Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager at Fairygodboss. Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women, and our mission is to improve the workplace for women by increasing transparency. We offer a variety of free resources like anonymous company reviews, job listings, articles, virtual recruiting events, and more to help women succeed in their careers. Before we get started, we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so feel free to leave them in the Q&A. You can also leave them in the chat. I'll be monitoring for both, but you're better off in the Q&A to make sure we can get to it. And in there, you can leave questions as yourself or anonymously, so feel free to ask whatever is on your mind. The webinar will also be recorded today and sent out in a follow-up email, so if you missed anything or you want to rewatch it back at any time, you'll have the ability to do so. Here with me today is Melissa. With over 15 years of corporate experience, Melissa brings the business background to salary negotiations. It's her mission to help ambitious and strong women get the pay and recognition that they deserve, and to do so with control and confidence. Throughout her career in a male-dominated and highly technical industry, Melissa grew her professional development and salary through standing up for what she believes in, her worth. With a background in human resources, compensation analysis, business development, and operations management, say that 10 times fast, Melissa has a unique 360 view on how compensation conversations are handled. As a head coach for one of the top salary negotiation firms in North America and the owner of her own business, Six Figure Salary Coaching, Melissa is backed with experience, expertise, and results. Thanks for being with me here today, Melissa. Over to you.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and to be really sharing a really powerful framework that I've used with my private clients and I've used personally to really realize a high degree of success in growing my salary within the workplace. I'm going to keep this slide up for now, just while everyone comes in. I'm putting right now a link to the workbook if you haven't had the chance to download it yet. I saw a comment that someone had an issue that the site can't be reached. If that is the case, I will look at that afterwards. I'm not going to try and troubleshoot live, but I'm really excited to be here. And while I'm introducing myself, I'd like to kind of gauge the audience to see where everybody is at in their career. So while I'm talking about myself, I would love for you to share your job titles and your level of seniority in your current workplace. I apologize, I have two screens open, so I'm still going to be kind of looking at the chat to see your responses, which is on my right. So if I'm looking off into the distance, that's why. So like Sam had mentioned, I am the owner of my own coaching business called Six Figure Salary Coaching, and I'm also the head salary negotiator for one of the largest salary negotiation companies in North America, salary coaching for women. And I'm really excited because Olivia, who is the owner of Salary Coaching for Women, her and I are actually launching a new mastermind. So this particular webinar is so timely because we're launching a new mastermind starting in February, and it is going to be a super, super powerful group of women to talk about everything that goes on in your career that needs to happen in order for you to grow your salary. Like Sam had also mentioned, I bring a very strategic and business background to my salary negotiation. So what we're going through today is really going to highlight how to properly convey your value in your organization in terms of what you bring to the business. You know, we have a lot of reasons why we deserve a salary increase, and when I'm coaching and when I'm working with my clients, I try and differentiate between inspiration and justification. So not, you know, I haven't received a pay increase in 3 years. That is a really good reason to inspire you, but what is the justification around why you are deserving? So my philosophy is, when I'm coaching and what I'm going to walk through today, is really changing your mindset to treat yourself like an asset in the business, and then translating your efforts and your contributions into the ROI, or the return on the investment, that an employer is receiving from you in the employment relationship. Because at the end of the day, this is very pessimistic, but at the end of the day, employees are there to provide a service. You are there to provide a service to your organization. And in very simple terms, employers look to their employees as assets, as a cog in the wheel. And that's not to say that employees aren't the most valuable asset, but it's how we communicate with business owners to show why we are truly worth pushing our salary ahead, and why are we, what have we changed in the employment relationship to improve upon the business so that we can continue to grow our earnings. From a management perspective, when we're going through this process, they want to know why you deserve to make more money from when you started or from when you've taken on this new position. And what we're going to walk through today is going to talk specifically to how we can frame our conversation to show why you deserve more because of the business, because of what you're performing in the business. So I'm just quickly looking here before we move on. We have, yes, GMs currently looking for a new job. Chris, you have to join our mastermind. This is exactly what we're talking about in the mastermind, is getting into your dream career job, all of that kind of stuff. A process analyst considered entry level, but work in a mid-level profession. Yeah, so you're providing really high value services, but you're saying, you know, it's considered entry level, but you're making a huge investment in the business. Client relations, yes. Associate manager, awesome. HR manager, payroll manager, Monica, unemployed, Yvonne looking for a new career. Yeah, awesome. Okay, I'm super excited to get started. I know some questions came in leading up to the event today. I'm going to address those questions where it's fitting. One question somebody has was they're already making 6 figures and they want to know, will these steps help me increase my 6 figures? Yes, absolutely. So this is a process that I go through. Truly, I'll do it sometimes, depending on the year that I'm in, multiple times throughout the year. And this is just to shift your way of thinking and how you advocate for yourself and how you communicate your value so that you can strategically approach the negotiation in a way that makes sense to the business owners. Another question that came in, I think just a couple of days ago, that a participant received a salary increase at the same time as a promotion. It was a 4% raise overall. This is a very specific question. Whomever asked the question, I do want you to know that I fully agree with you. The 4% raise when everybody else got 3 to account for your raise and your performance in the last fiscal year is pretty, I would say, disappointing. And I know you've started talking with your boss already, but really pay attention to what we're going to talk about here, because you can use this framework as your next means of having a conversation. Because what we typically do is we say, you know, I'm really not happy with my pay. I'd like to discuss it. And then you're kind of leaving it in your employer's hands to do something with it. Whereas I want to give you the tools to shape the conversation and prove what you're worth and what you want to be making. So I would encourage you to reach out to me. You know, you can either via email, you can join the mastermind, through Fairygodboss, whatever, and we can troubleshoot your very specific situation. Okay, so I'm actually gonna look at you guys. You guys get to look at my face the whole time. I'm taking the share off, so you should all be able to see me now. And yeah, let's get going. So like I said, if you've started on if you're able to get the workbook, a lot of this is outlined in the workbook, but the content, this delivery, this explanation, this deep dive explanation is not in there because I'm going to be talking basically for an hour. So I can't translate all of that into the workbook, but it'll help you organize your thoughts. So the very first step that we're going to go through to growing your salary is getting into the right frame of mind. Now, as I'm talking about this, I want to ask you a question, and I want to ask you, what is one thing that you believe that you are fantastic at? It doesn't matter if If you're currently employed, if you're looking to grow, if you're looking for a job, I want to hear what you guys think you are really great at. And I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up this chat box again because I like being able to see. There we go. Now, the reason why I'm asking you this question is I find a lot of people really struggle trying to say, like, what am I good at? And I want you to really start thinking at whatever it is. Maybe it's just getting stuff done. Maybe it's analysis. Maybe it's closing sales. Maybe you're a taskmaster. Maybe you're a really great facilitator. Maybe you have a whole bunch of innovative ideas that you can bring into the business that generates revenue. The reason why this is important and why frame of mind is so important is that if you do not believe in yourself, and if you do not believe that you are worth more, nobody is going to take you seriously. You can do all of the prep work in the world. You can follow this to a T, but if you are not fully prepared to back yourself, and if you don't believe in your heart of hearts that you are worth more, then when you're having conversations or when you're trying to advocate for yourself, that feeling comes through. And many times what we do, this is very cliche, of course, but many times as women, what we do is we discount what we want before the thought has fully matured in our mind. So we will say to ourselves in a second, I want a $30,000 increase. And then we're instantly like, whoa, that's too much. I'm going to be perceived as greedy. I don't deserve that. And then boom, the thought is dead. Because our frame of mind is not set up to truly be able to advocate for yourself. When you say, I want a $30,000 increase, or whatever your number is, $10,000, $1 million, you need to take that number and say, how do I prove that I am worth it? And that's where your frame of mind is incredibly important. And more often than not, and again, this is a cliche when it comes to women, but we're our worst enemies. And so you're really focusing on your frame of mind shifts that so that you can become your greatest advocate as opposed to your biggest obstacle. So I'm going to challenge you. Sam is going to put up a poll right away here. And I'm going to ask you, and I believe it is, it's not going to be, Sam, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. It's not going to be like, Kelly wants this increase. I think I only see the results. But I want to ask you, if you could get the increase that you want and that you feel like you are worth, what does that increase look like? And be honest here, I'm pretty sure this is anonymous. Sam, chime in if I'm wrong.
Yep, you're right, it's anonymous.
It is, okay, excellent. I really want you to start owning that value. And don't overthink it. What do you think that you are worth? Because I really want you to get excited and pumped up about the opportunity to earn more money and excited to start having these conversations. Even though it can be sometimes very daunting, remember that being proud of yourself and thinking highly of yourself does not mean that you're waltzing around and bragging to others. It means that you are showing yourself gratitude and appreciation and honoring your accomplishments. And that is a really important thing that you need to do for yourself to get into the right frame of mind. So when I work with my clients, and this is in the workbook as well, some of this stuff, but to get the ball rolling, some of the questions that I ask you is really like, what makes you really awesome at your job? Or what are you the most proud of? And so that's why I started this webinar asking specifically, what is something that you are really fantastic at? Really start thinking of what you're good at. What do you value about your job? Or what do you get out of it? What makes you great? What does your employer value about you and why? What makes you good at your job? So these are all things to really start thinking through to, I don't want to say start convincing yourself because you're already awesome, but sometimes we do need to remind ourselves why we are so deserving. Okay, now these are just a few questions that I have put in the workbook. Again, when we do coaching, a lot of this is a very one-on-one process. Or if you want to join our mastermind or join our group, which is our mastermind is free, by the way. If you are wanting to do that, we workshop a lot of this stuff and have a more engaging conversation to really push you through into that next level. Okay, so the first phase is the frame of mind, and I just want to look at really quickly some of the things that you guys are really fantastic at. So a lot of problem solving and solutions. That's awesome, because that is something that you guys, if you're a problem solver, like, you get stuff done. I attribute a lot of my success in my career simply because there's a problem and I solve it. It's not rocket science, but apparently a lot of people don't do that. We've all worked with those people. A lot of really great problem solvers. Awesome. Sorry, I'm scrolling. All right, research and analysis, excellent. Problem solving. Kelly is a relationship builder. That's excellent. That is really important even when it comes to negotiation. Let's see, Kimberly, great at systems engineering and finding where the holes are. That's awesome. Kelly, just explaining things and analysis. That's great. Project management, customer relationships. YM Campbell is fantastic at building teams and communication and organization. You guys, these are awesome. And I hope as you guys are thinking through these things that you also recognize that the things that you are really great at, there are a lot of people that aren't. So as women, and I'm making a very broad generalization here, but as women, we tend to just assume our really fantastic traits into our job. And so part of this process that I'm taking you through is about comparing yourself to the average employee, not comparing yourself to what your standards are. I know for myself, I have a high standards that I set for myself and for my work ethic and for my performance and what I bring to the table. And so a lot of times the things that I think are like obvious are actually not, because a lot of people don't just go out and get things done, or they're terrible at relationships. They're terrible at building relationships. They're terrible at building community and pushing engagement. And when we talk about those things, which I'm going to go through right away in phase 2, is we're really going to take all of those really important things that we're great at and translate that into how that positively impacts the business. Okay, so that brings me to step 2, and I talk a lot and I talk fast, so I'm thirsty, sorry. Step 2. This is a super important step. This is called defining your value. And value, I mean, the word value is obvious, but I use value as an acronym when I'm coaching as a way of properly communicating what you bring to the table. So before I dive into that specifically, I just want to sidestep for a second and share one thing that I heard very early on in my career is that if you want to move forward, you're always going to be working harder than what you're being paid. And I think that is, to me, I thought that was really good advice. I think it is a really great strategy to, work hard, have your results, build a business case basically through your results, and then push yourself ahead, and the money will follow. Most people don't succeed when they take a workplace approach of, well, give me the money and then I'll show you. Give me more money and I'll show you. Give me the promotion and I'll show you what I can do with it. There usually needs to be a bit of a give and take between your performance and your results, and it's usually your results are ahead of your pay and your career progression. When you have those proven results, it is really easy to ask for more money or advocate for a promotion because your results really do speak for themselves. The issue is that a lot of us work hard, you raise your new normal, your employer just becomes complacent in the employer relationship because It's always like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? You're good, you're performing, like no problems. And so they just kind of stop looking at you. And we can look at that as a bad thing because we're like, oh, my work is going unnoticed, I'm not valued. But the reality is, from a managerial perspective, is you're not their problem. Like, they know that you are good. They know that you have proven results. They know that you've got it. And so they're not paying attention to you. But if we don't kind of trickle in there and, you know, say, hey, like, look, I just want to point out, you know, how fantastic I am, the attention does not get paid properly. And so when you're in a situation where you're like doing the work of 3 people, but like for the price of 1, your employer just assumes that out of you because that's what you do. And in the reality, in your mind, you're like, holy shnikes, this is not fair. I'm frustrated. I don't feel valued. And your employer, I mean, obviously there's always employers out there that are, you know, really bad at valuing their employees in general. But I talk and work with a lot of women who are like, I love my job. I don't want to leave. I have a fantastic boss, but I'm so frustrated. And if I don't get this promotion, then I'm going to quit. And I'm like, whoa, like, pump the brakes. You have to look at it from the other angle. And so when we're talking about defining your value specifically, I really want you to take a step back and think about how your job has changed, how your job has evolved. And this can be hard to do by yourself because you usually need somebody to start asking you questions and probing for information to properly define your value, which I'm going to talk about right now. So that's where the collaboration of coaching or like a group environment is super, super valuable because you have somebody, like, in case you guys can't tell, I'm a very like in your face, like, no, tell me what that means. Tell me what that looked like a year ago. Tell me what, you know, you sometimes need somebody to probe you and pull that information out of you so that you can paint yourself in the best light. So when I'm talking about defining your value, like I said, value is an acronym for your value proposition. So what you bring to the table that nobody else does, your accomplishments and your achievements, and your accomplishments and achievements are really specific to your quantitative results, okay? What are you super proud of in terms of numbers? Your L is your level of authority. And this can be both physically, so what you're actively responsible for in your role, or it could be more hypothetically. So how have you grown? How have you become an expert? How are you well regarded in your role or the function that you serve? You don't need to be the boss to talk about your level of authority. Upgrades is how have you improved upon an experience? So that might be your position, your process. It will likely relate to your accomplishments, but it really is talking about how have you elevated your role, processes, efficiency, implemented technologies to make things easier. You're really talking about elevating the experience. And then E stands for your extra responsibilities. So again, we can look at this through 2 lenses. We can look at it to say, what have you taken on over a specific period of time, or what will you be taking on? So if you're advocating for a promotion, for example, or if you know that your company is going to be going through some changes, really looking at what is happening or how your role is going to evolve. Now, this extra responsibilities, I find, is one of the hardest things to take on because there's a lot of us out there, like myself included. I'm a yes girl. If something needs to get done, I'm like, yeah, I'm on it. I've got it. Probably all of you problem solvers, and I'm looking over here because I'm looking at the chat, but all of you problem solvers that's what happens probably is it's like, there's a problem. Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah. And that's who we are, that's how we perform. And it's really easy to just go and say yes, and then inevitably somehow it becomes your job or responsibility. And you're just go. And it is hard to look back and say, where was I a year ago? Where was I, oh my God, like 5 years ago? Because there's a lot of us that have complacent employers. Now, for the value, for the full value, I unfortunately do not have all the time to break all of these down. But again, if you're joining the mastermind, and I don't want to make this a massive plug, but there's just so much to give you, because it is a very dynamic conversation for a very specific scenario. But what I will say is that during communicating your value, this is where I really want you to think about yourself in terms of an asset. You want to make your value as numerically driven as possible. This is where you want numbers, stats, percentages, KPIs, all of that really like geeky stuff. And so when I'm coaching, like Sam mentioned, I have a very strong business background and a bit of a craft, if I do say so, job and finding the numerical number assigned to create your metric. Because I've dealt with women who, for example, were in like AP or AR, and they're like, yeah, like I don't generate business personally, so I can't talk about the I don't actually do anything in the business. And I'm like, whoa, like, no, here's everything that can go. This is the function that you serve. You know, if you're getting invoices out the door, if you've reduced the amount of errors, for example, if like that is huge, because when you have invoicing errors, obviously it delays payment. When you delay payment, it impacts it impacts AR, it impacts other divisions within your organization. It impacts how much money is actually coming into the company. Obviously, it takes more time to invoice when you have more errors. So I quite pride myself in my ability to take literally any job and translate and develop KPIs and functions to properly assign numbers to the job that you're performing. So what I'd like you to share, a lot of you guys, you've shared your job, you've shared your titles, but I want you to think really quickly off the top of your head, what is a number? Remind me of your position or the function that you serve, but what is a KPI that you can use, or a key performance indicator, or a number that you can use to start translating your worth? If you don't think that you can tie your job to numbers, tell me that you don't know, and I will challenge you on that. So I'm going to kind of watch over here again as I keep chatting. But again, I want to point out that when we're talking about your value, and you're talking about what you bring to the table, and we're talking about your upgrades and your level of authority and your value proposition, and we're talking about all these things, this is you compared to the average employee, okay? This is not compared to your standards. Like I mentioned, I have a very high standard in myself. Like, that's my minimum. I just thought that was normal until I really started taking a look at other people's performance. So I want you to think, when you're thinking through these numbers and you're thinking through your value, I want you to compare yourself to the most basic performance, okay? Now, again, I don't want to generalize, but as women, this is really hard for us to define and narrow down, because sometimes we think of these things like, if I talk about myself by pumping my own tires, I'm actually deflating somebody else's, or I'm inevitably or inadvertently, putting somebody else down. And that is absolutely not what we're doing here, okay? So I really want you to, we kind of get guilty about talking about our accomplishments sometimes, and I want you to get that guilt out of your head. This isn't about communicating that you are better than everybody. This is about acknowledging your skills and your contributions. And you don't need to say, like, I single-handedly increased our revenue by whatever, 20% over the last fiscal year. But you also should not downplay yourself and say that I was, only a participant, and so you can't own that. You can say things like, I was a key advocate for X initiatives to generate more revenue. I led the team to ensure that X, Y, and Z. You can still talk about yourself in a really positive and uplifting way and use really positive language without making yourself sound like you're taking all the credit, okay? So I want to take a second here and look at what some of your comments are. Account manager, so my sales and numbers or revenue. Yeah, like, no offense, those are easy. That's awesome though. So you can talk in terms of your how you've grown existing clients, how you've brought on new clients, how you have increased the overall profitability, how you've increased the quality of revenue, all of that kind of stuff. So Faye said, I'm not able to tie my job to meaning for numbers. It's very reactive and transactional, and it has been a challenge. So Faye, tell me what your job is. Remind me of what your job is. Improve process, business process analysis. Yes. So I'm not improving something, my team is not meeting their goals. This is true. So you can talk about actually achieving your goals, but also when you're talking about business process improvement, you have a lot of opportunity in terms of efficiency. And people tend to kind of glaze over what efficiency does for an organization. When we're talking about reducing double handling, we're talking about reducing the lag time from A to B. We're talking about, usually when you don't have a refined process, there are usually problems with things getting missed or doubling up on work, which is obviously a huge cost to an organization. Let's see, Ali, and sorry, you know, some of you guys, I see your full names or your full usernames, some I don't. Ali ... software engineer and hopeful manager, efficiency of development team, and I can't think of any other numbers. Girl, you're a software engineer. Like, let's talk about programming. Let's talk about project management. Let's talk about what you bring to the table when you're I don't know if you're like physically the one, you know, doing the engineering, but as you grow into a managerial role, you're pulling people together, you're managing a project, you're managing people, how your ability to catch errors or think strategically, your experience could potentially allow you to catch errors or see things to make the actual project more efficient. So those are things that, again, if I would be working with somebody one-on-one, I'd really try and say, okay, like, what are your key performance indicators in your actual project, and tell me what you bring to the table and all of that. Corporate and social responsibility policy director, difficult to price that. So yes, but when we talk about social responsibility, there's also a huge marketing piece, and there is also a huge branding recognition piece and market share piece that does come to mind. So I don't know if you're actually developing the policy or if you are just making sure that the policy is being adhered to. But either way, even if you can't price that, when we're talking about, and again, like, I'm not entirely sure corporate responsibility could be anything, and again, we would dive into that more one-on-one. But when we are talking about costs, the costs, either say for a budget, if you have a budget that you have to adhere to, you can talk about what you've done with that budget. If you have to do fundraising, I don't know. If you have specific initiatives that have developed more recognition in the workforce, more branding recognition, more media attention, all of that stuff does positively impact the business. Nothing that nobody has jobs simply for the sake of keeping you or me busy during the day. Corporate responsibility, social responsibility, for example, that didn't exist years ago because people weren't educated and it wasn't at top of mind for consumers. The only reason why companies are doing this now is because they recognize that if they do not pay attention to their impacts on society, that looks bad on them. Or they're not an employer of choice because the newer generations are becoming more aware of our actions and how that impacts, you know, the environment and everything around us. So they're not doing that. They're doing that because truly they have to, and they might care. They might care, and they might be coming from the most genuine place. I don't want to like strip away all the goodwill that companies do, but I want you to remember that they are doing this to bolster their portfolio, to bolster their profile, to gain market share, to resonate with their ideal audience. There is a reason why, and it is to serve their cause within the business. Okay, I want to keep going. I want to keep talking to you guys one way, but I need to keep going. So one question that came in here is, I'd like to hear advice on how applicants are changing career paths and they don't have the technical expertise in their new field. So I'm bringing this up here because when you go through this process of defining your value, what you start being able to realize, there are very transactional, very specific things that you're going to identify, but a lot of those things happen because of a turnkey process or because of the person that you are, and those are those soft skills. So let's take problem solving, for example. We talked about problem solvers off the top. We talked about how finding these solutions can positively impact the business. Even if you're changing your field of study, what you are actually doing though is you're taking your ability to solve problems and to ramp up in a business, to build impact right away, to make a difference, to not get complacent in your job. That is something that that skill set is something that you are going to take to your new career. So maybe you don't have the technical expertise, but all of your project management, all of your critical thinking, all of your solution-focused efforts will come to the new job. And keep in mind, you can learn technical. You cannot learn work ethic, okay? So that's really short and sweet. We're jamming a lot into this hour, you guys. So I'm going to move on to step 3. We're like 40 minutes in and we're on step 2. Step 3 is really about defining your audience and defining your business framework. Now, this is really important because when you're getting ready to physically ask for more money, it's really important to know who you're talking to or what that organizational structure is going to look like or what that process is going to look like. In the mastermind, and again, I don't mean to plug this mastermind, it's just actually very timely, but Olivia, who is the owner of Salary Coaching for Women, she does a lot of work with body language when it comes to negotiation, and it is super incredible. And that stuff that is going to go on in our mastermind. And she also talks a lot about sharks and trolls. So really trying to define the type of person that you're going to be talking to and how to overcome those roadblocks during the negotiation. Because knowing how to overcome these types of scenarios in advance is huge when it comes to requesting a pay increase. If you are trained and can understand the body language of the person who's sitting on the other side of the desk, it allows you to adapt and shift your conversations a little bit to play into their hand. Likewise, when we're talking about your business framework and your business structure, knowing what the process is going to look like, knowing what all the personalities are, and I say that because there's always someone out there who's just so difficult to deal with or not your biggest fan or whatever the case may be. There's always people that you might not feel have your back. And you need to know where they come into play and how to finesse those personalities so that you guys aren't butting heads. And this is really, a lot of times we miss this step or it is the reason why we don't move forward because we're afraid of being rejected. We're afraid of that uncomfortableness. And I get it, I do. But identifying these things and learning how to overcome them really puts you in the driver's seat when it comes to discussing your salary because you have something that they don't. And that is ultimately when you talk about negotiation, that is something that is super, super important. Now, when it comes to the business framework, there are some times that are better than others to start the conversation. There are 3 in general, but I'm almost hesitant to share that with you guys because a lot of times people hear, oh, well, it's not the right time, so I'm going to delay it for 8 months. And I don't want you guys to do this. So Sam's going to put a poll up. I want to kind of poll the audience to see, do you want to know the 3 best times to negotiate your raise, or should we just commit to it and keep going? While you guys are doing this, I did have a A really great question that came through. I'm nearing the max of my pay at my current level. So this is really good when it comes to knowing your salary band. So the question is, I'm at the max. How do I explain that I'm worth more and either jump to the next pay band and get a promotion or convince HR to widen the band? This is a really great question, and I see this a lot because we're high performers, we're butting up to the top of my salary, but again, we're doers, we're yes people, we're problem solvers, so we're still taking on more and more and more, and our job is still classified as like whatever, and we're at the top of our band, and now you're in a position where you're like, I can't grow, but I'm taking on more responsibility. This is where strategy is super important. This is where knowing your audience and then defining your value and knowing your business framework is really important. So this is where, again, if I was working, this is where we would start dissecting your salary bands and then dissecting what it is that you're doing and how the work that you do is actually outside of your current position. So if you ultimately want a promotion to say, look, this is how I'm performing, this is the value that I've brought already, like basically, let's just formalize this. Bump me up to this promotion. Or, and I've worked with clients before where we've actually convinced their employer to reclassify the job or their position in the HR systems. So this is where that strategy and knowing the business and really knowing what you bring to the table is really important to continue to advance yourself, okay? Let's see. Sam, are all the results in for the, oh, okay, 84% said yes. Okay, I'm like actually talking, I already talk fast, I'm gonna talk a lot faster because we still have more to go. So the 3 best times to ask for a pay increase, and you guys, you cannot use this as an excuse not to do it, but use it to plan or use it to, or don't use it. Just keep this in the back of your mind. The best time, the 3 times, number 1, obviously when you're starting a new job. And I say obviously, but I also recognize that some people are in positions where they're like, number 1, I just need a job, or you don't want to start off on the wrong foot by asking for money. When you get a job offer, they're telling you they want you. They want your services, and you are saying, I'm the best fit for the job, okay? I think there's a statistic that's like something like, God, I can't remember the number off the top of my head. A large portion of employers expect employees to negotiate their pay at the time of the offer, but only 7% of women actually do. And I honestly, I can talk like all day about this. There's a lot of this stuff on gender wage gap, but if only 7% of the women actually negotiate their pay increase at the time of a job, what does that do for the gender wage gap? It's like 80% or something like that of men negotiate at the time of the offer, and only 7% of women do. During the negotiation, statistically speaking, I think there's something like a 10% increase in your pay at the time of the offer. So if you were to take a man and a woman equally qualified for the same job, and the guy is already, he's going to negotiate, say he gets that 10%, we are starting out the gate with the gender wage gap instantly. And I don't want to, it's not like women's fault, but let's take some responsibility. Let's take a step up to say, I am worth more. How you phrase those conversations is really important, because I know a lot of times we're like, oh, like what if they say no? I don't want them to think that I don't want the job. So again, that's all stuff that we kind of workshop. So time of a job offer. The second time is for a promotion. So I had a question off the top about that 4% pay increase. When you're given a promotion, that is such an opportune time to negotiate your pay. I'm actually shocked how many people get promotions with no pay increase. From my standpoint, there has to be financial consideration to change the scope of your job in a contractual term. So I always find it hilarious how people will change the scope of their job, but there's no financial consideration. So when you're changing jobs, this is the time to say, hey, like, and it's hard because we're always excited about that promotion or that next step or that recognition, but we really need to say, I want to understand what this new position looks like in terms of employees, travel, compensation. You kind of just slide like compensation in there, and expectations, timelines, whatever, financial responsibilities, and you start opening up the doors for the conversation. The third time, which is really great to use if you're at your max pay, or you've been amazing at your job, but you have not seen a pay increase in a number of years, is in Q4 of your fiscal year end. What happens typically in the fourth quarter is companies are starting to talk about budgets, hires, strategic planning. This process is usually longer, but if you start having the conversation while they're talking about budgets, more often than not, and again, if it's posed properly, they will make room for your new salary in the budget. Doing it during salary reviews is hard. That's a good time as well, but it's hard because a lot of times your employer is given like a bucket of money that they need to allocate, and it'll be like 3% that you distribute amongst all of the staff, and some people will get 1% and some people will get 4%, but they have to work with this money. So when you're having these conversations, again, the process tends to take a little bit longer, but you have a really good likelihood of success because they can build it into their budget and they can plan for it, okay? That is step 3. Okay, step 4, we are crafting your business case. This is where you're going to pull all of this information, all of this strategy, all of your prep work together to build a actual business case. And I say business case because, again, you are an asset. You are talking about your company's return on their investment in you. You're taking all of your numbers, all of your stats, everything that you've compiled during step 2 and step 3 to build a solid business case. You have gone through the exercise now of establishing irrefutable evidence that you deserve more and why you deserve more. So now you want to take that information and put it into a true business case. Now, I'm not talking about a business proposal that's like 20 pages long. I'm talking like an email, a business, like a couple of pages. I normally recommend 4 sections where it has your opening paragraph, your hard facts, so that's all your really strong quantitative evidence, your soft facts. So those are the things that maybe don't have the quantitative evidence associated with it, but it is still a really important point that you need to bring forward. And then what I call a Goodwill Closing, which is basically just a nice way of ending off your business case. Now, one really important part of your business case, and people they have a difference of opinion on this, but for me, a really important step here is that you communicate the dollar amount that you want, okay? Do not say, I would like to discuss with you a potential increase of my salary. And here is all the reasons why. Because now what you have done is you have given the person on the other end the full authority to decide what you are worth. And nothing is more disheartening than that. When you've gone through this exercise and they're like, you're right, thank you, here is a $2,000 increase or a $5,000 increase. And you're like, what? Like, nothing is more like infuriating than that, okay? So I recommend that you say, I respectfully request my salary to be revised to $1 million, okay? Now, do not be shy about this number. I want you to put that number in there. I do not want you to sell yourself short. There's probably going to be a bit of a negotiation. If you're swinging for the fences, I've literally had somebody laugh at me once. I had a boss that was like, you're asking for a lot of money. And I was like, I know, but here's why. And again, my boss paid zero attention to what I did because I was good at my job. And he was like, okay, interesting. All of a sudden took his pen out and was making notes. So the reason why I feel like it's really important that you communicate your value is because I want you to set the stage for what you're expecting to receive. And all of your evidence is going to be there to support that. Otherwise, so now your employer, now the conversation is shifted from saying, she wants $1 million increase. Can we make that happen? You know, they're talking to HR, they're looking at their numbers, blah, blah, blah. Is she, like, where does that sit in the bounds? They can have all these conversations around your number. They're not trying to decide, okay, well, okay, so she was at she was at 500,000 2 years ago. She got that promotion. Well, yeah, she didn't get a pay increase for 5 years. But then we increased her pay. So you know what, in the last couple of years, she has actually doubled her pay increase. Like, you're taking all of those conversations out of it and you're saying, this is what I want. And you're not like, if I don't get it, I'm gonna walk. But you're being honest. You're going through this exercise, and I really want you to own that process, okay? After you've crafted your business case, step 5 is you're making your formal request. Now, a lot of people, there's a lot of conversation around, do I put it in writing first and do I give it to my boss? Or do I have a conversation first and then back it up in writing? The reason why I highly recommend that you put it in writing and you put it in an email or a formal request is because you are now giving your employer the same information as you when you are ready to have the conversation. I have seen so many times, I've worked with clients before where they're like, no, I can't just send an email. I'm going to go and talk to him first or her first, and I'm going to communicate everything. And then they get so flustered that they miss half the things that they want to, properly articulate. And their boss has no idea what is coming at them. Maybe you scheduled a meeting to discuss your salary. Maybe you're like, hey, do you have, 5 or 35 minutes for me to like talk to you about my pay? And you just throw all of this information at them, and they are in no position to respond. They are in no position to have a conversation with you. They are just getting up to speed. So now you're talking, this is why I want $1 million and I'm really great and here's all the reasons why. And they're sitting there taking it in. You're getting nothing back from them. And then you leave and you're like, how did that conversation go? I don't know. What was the next step? I really recommend putting something very articulate together, giving them that information so that they can digest it, so that they can digest your performance, and then saying, and this is in the Goodwill Closing when it comes to your business case, and saying, I would like to have the opportunity to discuss this with you in person, early next week or whatever the case may be. That way, when you guys are meeting, you are both coming at the conversation with the same level of information, and you can actually have a conversation. You can have a conversation about other things that you want to point out, what's going on in the organization. You can have a really constructive conversation. For me, that is something that I am a huge, huge advocate of. And it doesn't hurt that you've now crafted your thoughts, put it down on paper, and you don't have to worry about forgetting something in the conversation. Okay? Step 6 is the actual discussion. So you've taken all of this time, you have crafted your letter, you've sent it to your boss, and now you have to talk about it. Okay, and so when I coach, when I'm working with someone one-on-one and we're defining their value, there tends to be just like pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of really great stuff. But we only take the heavy hitting points and then we move the other stuff to what I call buzz statements, or things that are really valuable to bring up in the conversation, but we don't need to write a novel about like your 10-year experience. Okay, so this is where we start thinking through, what are some of the things that I want to bring up? But also, you need to start preparing for things like body language, things like using persuasive language, how to strategize a specific obstacle. What happens, for example, if you requested $1 million increase and they were like, we will give you $5,000. You need to control your like, are you effing kidding me face? So now we start preparing for the discussion. What happens if you don't get what you want? How do you segue the conversation? How do you start to negotiate in this conversation? How do you exit the conversation? How do you start the conversation? So this is where you start thinking through, again, a lot of the stuff from phase 3 of knowing your audience and knowing your business framework, and start putting that in preparation for practice. And again, we talk a lot about that in the mastermind. This is like a really jam-packed, like 1-hour session. I'm parched. But this is where all of your prep work is really going to help you, number one, gain the confidence to have the conversation, but also start to strategize the different ways that this is going to go, and think through different obstacles and how you can overcome them so you're not jolted if something happens. If they're like, yeah, here's that $5,000, you've gotten your anger out already, you've got your your face off, and you can say, okay. And I had this happen once. I was like, I want a $40,000 pay increase, and they were like, that is ridiculous. And I said no, and here's why. And then as we started having the conversation, I had said, and I had prepped for this because I knew I was asking for a lot, and I had said, look, I get that what I'm asking for is a lot of money. I'm not naive to that value or the impact that it's going to have on the business. But it is important for me that you know what I'm working towards. And my boss was like, yeah, that is a really great point. And I said, I know that taking all of this in one shot, like tomorrow, is probably a tall ask. And this is a cue from Olivia, knowing the type of person that I was negotiating with, I said, is there a way that you can help me get there? Is there a way so that we can work towards this over the next year? And sure enough, he was like, I know that I can give you 50% now. We can revisit this in 6 months. I went through this entire 6-step process again. And of course, he forgot to bring it up, so I had to bring up the conversation, and I got it. It took a while, but I got it. And so managing these expectations, managing your strategy is a really important way of properly communicating your value and coming out of that conversation. And again, that is I wish I could give you a clear roadmap on how to do that, but it really depends on who you're working with, the bureaucracy and the organization, all of those things that we pull together to build a strategy to make you truly successful in this endeavor. So I'm really proud of myself, you guys. I actually thought that I would go way over an hour. I hope you guys found this valuable, first of all. I'm going to take a look at some of the chats. Sam's popping in. I have these Q&As. I'm cool to hang out for a couple extra minutes. If you guys are, the replay will be available if your question is answered at the end and you have to jump off. I'm also going to review some of these comments as well. Sam, do you need to add?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say thank you so much. And I was going to say the same thing, that I can hang out for another about 2 minutes before I'm about to be kicked out of my room. But okay, we can get to like 1 or 2 questions. And so if you have to jump off, the recording will be sent out later. But I want to start with one question that I think is really interesting and relates to a decent amount of people. Emily asked, what if you work remotely or your boss is in a different office and you don't have the ability to see or use body language? There's not that actual face-to-face connection. What should you do?
Yeah, this is a really great question. Because you're right, you don't have that body language. You don't even necessarily have that opportunity to have time in the trenches to build a really casual relationship. So it really will depend on the type of relationship you have with your boss in the first place. I would encourage you to try and have like a Zoom meeting or something so that you can have somewhat of a face-to-face, where I'm like looking at sound, but my camera's here. So you can have somewhat of a face-to-face conversation. The other thing is that when you put it in writing, you now can have a more informed conversation over the phone. So you can still take what you know about that individual from your previous experiences to try and understand who that person is and how they react and how they negotiate, and still use your language throughout that process of having the conversation. So it is a little bit harder, but hopefully you have enough information from them and you have such a solid business case that your facts will speak for themselves. Hey, welcome back. Unfortunately, we were cut off while I was trying to answer some of your questions. So I wanted to take an opportunity to record my response and try and answer the questions as best as possible. Again, a lot of people have asked about the mastermind. So if you download the workbook, the link to the mastermind is in there, and it will be also sent to you via email if that's something that you're interested in. The group actually doesn't kick off until March, so you'll be in the group, or sorry, until February. You'll be in the group in advance. Just don't expect any activity there until February. But don't let that stall you either. If you have questions for myself or Olivia, like, we're both here to help and we're both here to strategize. So with that said, I do want to answer a couple of the questions. So when I got cut off, the question was, are the ways to get six figures the same to get more pay or benefits once you've hit that six-figure range? I'm already in that range, and I want to make sure that I not only remain marketable, but continue to increase my salary at the same time. So first of all, this is kind of a two-pronged question. When it comes, if you've already hit your six figures, awesome, but you can still use this process over and over and over again to continue to justify your salary. We did 6 steps to six figures just because six figures is such a milestone mark in your career and in your earnings, but the process doesn't change if you're trying to grow your six-figure salary as well. So you still want to define your value. You still want to properly be in the right frame of mind. You still want to know your audience. You still want to prepare for the negotiation. The process is the same. And like I said at the kickoff of the webinar, I have done this process multiple times, even in the same year. If it's justified and if your contribution is justified, then like, go for it. Now, the other part of this question was on the benefits. Benefits are hard, and I was saying this right before I got cut off, but the benefits are hard because depending on the size of your corporation or your company, the larger it is, the less flexibility or leniency they have when it comes to like your health insurance benefits, but also other fringe benefits like paid time off or sick time or whatever the case may be. So that unfortunately will really come down to your employer and the amount of flexibility that they have. I know I worked at one organization, they were acquired and lost quite a bit of flexibility, but before they were acquired, they absolutely gave people an extra week's holiday, for example, as opposed to a pay increase. Because I think a lot of us can attest to the fact that you kind of reach a point in your career where you're like, I'm making enough money. I'm happy in my job. I'm not climbing the corporate ladder anymore, but what I would really like is more of this or more of that. And so depending on your company's flexibility in applying that will really depend on if they can even allow it. But when you're thinking of through negotiation and you're thinking through body language and you're thinking through your company structure, you still want to think through these things to determine how to properly address the conversation about more benefits, be it standard benefits or fringe benefits. I had a question. What do you do when your business unit is on a hiring freeze and your team went from 5 down to 2? And when that person tried to negotiate for a higher salary to stay and not make the new position, the manager was unable to counter or keep him. Also, I was the lowest paid person on the team prior to the last person leaving. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, hiring or salary freezes or hiring freezes, they are difficult from a company standpoint because they're saying like, we're not increasing overhead, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. And they do have a financial responsibility to their budgets and to their business to make those decisions. I mean, ultimately, if their business isn't profitable anymore, it's not doing anybody any favors for their career and their growth and progression. Now, I've been employed in a company that was on a hiring freeze and on a pay freeze, but I still followed this same structure to start having the conversations around what I bring to the table, even and that even stressed the importance considering they were going down in headcount. So I was able to create a business case following these same steps, but I really focused on the fact that what I was bringing to the table was helping increase the profitability of the organization, overall efficiency, what I was and who I was with all these downsizes, what I've been able to take on so that the company has still been able to stay in business. So you want to kind of play to that card a little bit. Now, I'm really not sure. I know you'd said, you had made the point that a person tried to negotiate a higher salary and not take a position. The director was unable to counter offer to keep him. So I'm not entirely sure the full scope of the scenario. More often than not, when companies are on hiring freezes or salary freezes, they're doing that to set a precedent across the board that we're not bringing on new headcount and nobody's getting a salary increase. But that doesn't mean that they're bankrupt and they have literally nothing to offer. So if it were me, you know, I would be sensitive to that and say, like, I understand that we're on a hiring freeze, but I want to take a moment to just discuss how my job has changed and evolved. And I'm happy to take it on. I want to continue to see the company move ahead. But in saying that, I also recognize that my taking on these extra responsibilities, X, Y, and Z, is saving the company money. I want to step up, but I would like my position to be also reevaluated, because you're not asking to have like a $200,000 pay increase because the other 4 people didn't get replaced, but you are asking to open up the channels for conversation about how your role has evolved, and then keeping the door open for how your compensation can evolve as well. Now you're saying I need to leave, right? Like that was part of your comment. That is 100% on you and your success or trust within the organization. I'm personally not somebody who takes leaving an organization lightly. Finding a new job, getting established, ramping up, all of those things take time. And I don't like going through that unless I absolutely have to. So I personally believe in trying to make the employment relationship work as much as possible. So I'm going to say to you, like, okay, you need to leave, right? Like, I don't know, but have you tried to have these conversations? What has their response been? I mean, if they were like, no, end of story, we're not even talking about this, we don't care, it is what it is, and they're really rude about it, you know, that says a lot about your employer as well. I wouldn't want to work for a place like that. But have the conversation. This other guy who wanted a pay increase to stay, I'm not a fan of ultimatums. I think that they're very dangerous. I think you need to approach it from a perspective of having a collaborative and constructive conversation around pay and responsibility, to go into your organization and say, if you don't give me a pay increase, then I'm going to leave. You better be like damn sure you're ready to walk away if that's the case. And that leaves a bad taste. No one wants to negotiate under pressure like that. I would not approach it that way. And then I think this is the final question. What if you're in a career transition and looking to be self-employed? Does that provide more flexibility to set your fees? So I'm not sure if I entirely follow what this question is asking, but when you're talking about your fees, if you're looking to get away from your Monday to Friday 8 to 5 and you're looking to be self-employed, I think that this is a really good exercise for a person to go to when setting up your fees or looking to increase your fees. I do consulting now. I am self-employed, and a lot of my contracts have that I retain the right for a review of my fees. I usually set, when I onboard a client, I usually set a fee review within the first 3 months. And then I'm going through this practice, I'm going through this process to really document what I brought to the table. And then I open the conversation again in a few months to talk about my fees, talk about my hours, talk about what I bring to the table, and keep it really collaborative. So whether or not you want to do that with you being self-employed, but go through this practice, go through this process to really think about what you bring to the table for your clients. And it is kind of the same thing. Like, this is what I can do for you. This is what I can offer you. You've been my client for X amount of time. I am looking to increase my rates. And I always encourage it to be a collaborative discussion, not like effective February 1st, you'll see a 10% increase on my fees. Like, I don't think that that's a good way to approach business, but that's obviously strictly my opinion. But when you go through this process of properly defining your value, you're coming at it from a business-centric standpoint. And that, for me, is what is really important, because you're showing what you bring to the table and how your employer, be it your client or a traditional employee-employer relationship, what they're getting out of that investment in you. That's all the questions. I'm sorry we got cut off. If anybody has any other questions, you can find me on Fairygodboss. Also, it is easy, probably easier to email me, melissa@salarycoaching.com. I think that there's a way that I can put it up, up here, maybe whiteboard. There we go. I will put it, can I type in this thing? Oh my goodness. No, I'm not gonna write it out this way. Oh man. Anyways, it's pretty easy. Melissa@salarycoaching.com. Again, if you responded, if you downloaded the workbook, you'll have access to Olivia's email. You can reply to Olivia or myself. We are so excited that you were able to have us and that you've watched the end of even the supplementary video. Thank you again for tuning in, and we look forward to getting to know you and help you grow, go out, earn more money, share all your success stories along the way. Thank you.